are back on this Tuesday, April 12th edition of The Link. Jason Salas here. Glad to be part and have you guys along for the ride because we are bringing into the KUM News Zoom room two friends of the show from the Society of Human Resources Management, a very, very worthwhile organization, and one that I would say the industry of HR, we've talked about this many times on the show, has gained in so much more criticality and importance, probably in the minds of like many people that just naively thought that HR was the place that you go when you first get hired and if you get in trouble like me, and then when you get fired. So we have Mike Pangilinan, who is the Vice President of Programs for the Guam chapter of SHRM, and then we have Daphne Leon Guerrero, who is the president of the organization. So really, really glad to have the both of you here because we are talking about the issue today of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, something that is absolutely important to our island economy and to organizational behavior on Guam. So Mike and Daphne, Hafaday, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us, Jason. Good morning. And Sabrina, thank you so much.
Good morning, Jason, Sabrina.
Good
to see you both.
All right, Mike, this is becoming a recurring thing. We bring you on whenever matters of organizational confrontation, crisis, but in this case, opportunity comes up.
Well, I appreciate that you've invited me back to talk about things. Sometimes I'm here to talk about changes in the law that have happened over the past couple of years that need interpretation. But today we're here to talk about one of our monthly briefings that SHRM Guam puts on each month. Try to do it every month, and they're just these 90-minute briefings that we do in the morning once a month on different relevant topics in HR. And I think this one's particularly exciting because it's something that's so relevant to HR and business right now, and that's diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so we've got one that's happening tomorrow morning from 8:30 to 10 in the morning. It's virtual. It's our last virtual briefing before we go back live next month, and we're excited about that. But it's a topic that I've learned a lot about in the past year and a half that I've been with SHRM. It's a little bit out of my wheelhouse as an attorney to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion because it's not so much legal compliance as it is really a business strategy and a philosophy of workforce that not only makes for a happier employee, but also for more productivity and a better bottom line. And
that's interesting, Mike, because do you think a lot of businesses should see DEI as something philosophical, or should they make this kind of like part of their core business practice going forward?
Well, no, that's kind of what we're going to be talking about tomorrow. That I think that it's been over the past, probably really 5+ years. It's been something that businesses have known through the studies that have been done that having a diverse and inclusive workforce is better for business. And so it's something that's really not even debated anymore within the HR and business community. It's just understood. Just a question of how do you implement it. So that to take it from accepting the concept to actually putting it into action. And that's why we're bringing out an expert on this that's going to appear virtually and kind of lead the discussion tomorrow. Sean V,
right?
She's an adjunct professor from UC Riverside and the founder of a company out there that specializes in diversity and anti-harassment in the workplace and helping businesses and organizations kind of get through that. So we're going to have an expert who's going to lead the discussion that's going to explain how to actually implement that policy and make it something that works in your workplace.
Yeah, and Daph, if you could talk a little bit more about Sean V and the presentation he will be giving tomorrow.
Sure. So definitely. So last year when we had our annual conference, we had another world-renowned speaker, Dr. Milton Perkins, introduce this concept of DE&I because, it hasn't really been as present here on Guam as it has been, stateside. So what he introduced it at the higher level. And so we wanted to break it down to the basics and really explore how we can implement these DE&I initiatives in our workplace, but also help us to understand, because what a lot of even our board members were saying is, I don't really understand why we use, what is the purpose of using pronouns, right? And that's where, after your name, you'll have your pronouns, she, her, hers, those types of things. So really just the basics of DE&I. And Sean, she has her master's degree in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And she said, hey, I can break it down and really go down to the basics of how or why DE&I is important. What are the concepts behind DE&I, and how can you build actions around these initiatives in the workplace? So that's why we wanted Sean here, is so that she can give us, just the meat and potatoes of DE&I, because we got the high level. We all know, as Mike said, that DE&I initiatives are good for the employees and also good for the organization. So now how do we take that and how do we institutionalize it, build it into our policies and our practices, our incentive programs, things of that nature? How do we carry it forward? So that's what Sean is going to be.
Do either of you think that the business managers or like big thinkers on Guam would be maybe a little bit more receptive and to the concept of, because with diversity, like on Guam, it's such a diverse population anyway. It's like we grow up having friends from all different walks of life, and we have friends who live like on base and have been all over the world and everything like that. So I would think this would be kind of like ingrained in us to actually incorporate this. And maybe like Mike, you said from a business standpoint, you increase your workforce diversity and inclusivity, you have a richer tapestry of opinions and creativity levels and different ways of perceiving things and everything. And I would think this would greatly improve your bottom line.
I think that that's one of the things that people in Guam, business leaders in Guam, might initially react to this thinking, well, do we really need this on Guam? Because we have so much diversity as it is, and we're already so diverse. But I think what I've learned just over the past year and a half about that is that every place, every region in the U.S. has its mix of backgrounds and ethnicities and cultures. But there's still something to be learned about diversity, equity, and inclusion, no matter where you are. Because maybe our mix of backgrounds is different than somewhere in Iowa is, but we still have biases. We still, certain populations within our community we sort of treat, we may have a tendency to treat differently. And we have to get through that, and we have to understand that these concepts are important everywhere. And when you actually implement it, and even though you're implementing it really, as to different groups in different places, but the concepts are the same concepts, and the biases can really be just as strong in a culture like this as they can be in any other place. So I think it's really important. But I think it's something that we need to learn more about. And like Daphne said, it hasn't caught on as much maybe out here as it has in the States within the HR and business communities, because some people here are still unfamiliar with it. But having gone through this pandemic and having seen sort of all the innovation that businesses have to go through, it's just become even more apparent that how necessary and how important this concept is, and how important it is to kind of get people aware of it out here.
And if I may add to that, Mike is exactly on point. But I know when people think about diversity, they usually think about race diversity. But there are other types of diversity within the workforce that we have to be concerned about. These are things like age diversity, disability, veteran status, sexual orientation. Those are the different types of diversity, and not just as a whole. Because yes, as a community, we are more diverse. But what does your leadership level look like? Are we diverse at all levels of the organization, not just as a whole? Because what usually happens is as you move up into the hierarchy, what does your leadership team look like? Is that diversity reflected across the entire organization, or is it concentrated at certain levels and absent at certain levels? So when we look at diversity, we have to look at it that way. Are we giving people the opportunities equally across the board?
Sure. Well, I actually had a friend, Daph, who was with a company locally, and they actually hired someone who was of Muslim faith, and this was the first time anybody interacted anyone of that religion, and they said they were kind of confused, and they said, we're giving you the freedom to face to Mecca 5 times a day to pray, as part of your beliefs, but they also said from an HR standpoint, is the person still on the clock at that time? Do we, how do we handle this in terms of, their responsibilities? And they said, we absolutely wanted to be legit, but we just, there was kind of like this gray area where we didn't know as far as the operation. So I think this discussion is going to be absolutely wonderful. It's something that everybody needs to participate. So real quick before we let you go, how can people register to to participate and to avail of these discussions?
We've got our website. That's the best place. You can go to guam.shrm.org, and we've got a link on the website that allows you to register. Click the link. It's a very nominal fee, 25 for members, 35 for non-members. And while you're on the website, go ahead and become a member. That would be a good thing because you'll have access to a wealth of information and special pricing on all of our events going forward through the rest of the year. And the membership is easy, and you can click on the link, join as a member to join.
Absolutely. Trust me, guys, it's going to be one of the best memberships you ever enroll for. I mean, it pays for itself several times over. So Daphne and Mike, thank you very much for putting this on and what you continue to do for our business community. Very much appreciated.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having us.
All right. Have a wonderful Easter to the both of you and your families and your teams.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Okay, and now we're going to go to our link update.